We have a really all-star panel to share more about the past, present, and future of off-chain assets being brought on-chain. So I'd like to invite to the stage Colin Cunningham, Head of Business Development at Centrifuge, Eugene Ng, co-founder at OpenEden, Sam Liu, Director of Product at Circle, Robert McCracken, Ecosystem Lead at Alchemy Pay, and give it up for our moderator, Jing Sun, co-founder at IoTeX.
So how was your day so far? Good? Cool. Good. Let's start.
Good.
Okay, so before discussion, maybe I just share a set of statistics. Based on a report from Boston Consulting Group, they expect the on-chain real-world asset market is expected to meet 1.4 trillion to 10 trillion by 2030. But on the other hand, when we look at our on-chain kind of TVL about the RWA market, actually it's 1.3 billion. So what does it mean? So right now we only capture 0.01% of the market, potential market, which means just actually we have 1,000 times growth opportunity in the next decade for the RWA. That's why just everyone talk about the RWA. That's why we make this panel together. So today at the Real World, we are so honored and excited to have these 4 leaders of this category to share with our audience everything about digitizing the real world asset from off-chain on-chain. Let's dive in. So to start this, kind of discussion, how about let us know about yourself, your name, your journey, and also what your company doing.
Yeah, so I'm Colin Cunningham, head of growth, head of business development at Centrifuge. I've been at Centrifuge about 2.5 years. Centrifuge has been around for about 6. So kind of the OG of the real world asset space. We are an institutional platform for credit on chain. So the way we think about our business is we want to be the best place for asset managers to issue credit, manage it, and distribute it via the blockchain. My job is to work a lot with our user base, and so thinking a lot about institutional investors, DAOs, DAO treasuries, high net worth, foundations. What does that side of our marketplace look like? And then on the other side, asset managers, credit funds, asset originators. What are the right types of deals that should be coming to the Centrifuge platform? We are a DAO, so we have our own CFG utility token, and a lot of the work that we're focused on is trying to be a very diverse place for all types of asset classes. And our vision is that any investor who wants to build a complete credit portfolio can do so through Centrifuge on-chain. So it's been a lot of fun. I guess I'll end with saying we're pretty well known for our relationship with MakerDAO and Block Tower, who's a prominent venture capital firm, invested in Centrifuge and then launched their own credit fund on Centrifuge. It's now a little over, the platform's probably about 250 million in assets under management, and 150 of that is coming from the relationship with Block Tower and MakerDAO. So really happy to be here, and thanks for having us, Jing.
Hey guys. My name is Eugene, and investment banker turned crypto investor in 2017. Co-founded a high-frequency trading company that popularly known as DWF. I'm also a co-founder of OpenEden Labs. We built the first tokenized real-world asset vault last year, and we launched this year in April. So why we differentiated? I mean, there are a dime a dozen of tokenized T-bill products out there, but we the first guys to build a streaming product. So you have streaming music in the form of Spotify, streaming videos in the form of YouTube, but money and assets on streaming by creating a tokenized vault on the EIP 4626 standard. We are literally bringing on off-chain assets on-chain. You can buy, sell T-bill tokens 24/7 over the weekends, when you get out from bed. And I think that's really what we want to achieve with tokenization of real-world assets. And with us, I think the second differentiation is the way the way that we actually bring off-chain assets on-chain in a regulatory compliant manner. So we use established fund structures that people are very comfortable with, that they actually understand. And I think the challenge here today is really the education. How do you exactly use smart contracts, blockchain, to tokenize real-world assets, to instill real-time transparency, and more importantly, how do we exactly add value to the ecosystem, and obviously to bring that, trillions of dollars of off-chain assets in a fungible manner for the world tomorrow. So that's really a long and short of, OpenEden.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, I'm Robert from Alchemy Pay. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us. And yeah, Alchemy Pay, we're a fiat crypto payment gateway. So we're really kind of the first port of call for getting people in and out of the crypto economy. Yeah, so really bridging the gap between fiat currencies and cryptocurrencies. So that would be on and off ramping, plugins for Web3 platforms. Really, also the NFT checkout is something that's a big thing for us as well, which is making NFTs much more accessible to people. I think NFTs specifically is something where you get a lot of people from outside of the crypto world coming into it, so you want to have that kind of accessibility on NFT marketplaces. We also just launched our crypto-funded MasterCard as well, which is available as a virtual or physical card, and that's a white label service. We're here today because we're friends with IoTeX. We've been working with IoTeX for a couple of years, actually providing them with our on and off ramping service and giving utility to the IoTeX token for payment services as well for our merchant network. So really, moving funds between fiat and crypto in just about every scenario you could imagine, supporting a lot of chains and a lot of cryptocurrencies.
That's great. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam. I work for a company called Circle, and I'm currently Director of Product with a focus on the growth of USDC at Circle. So Circle is the sole issuer of the one with the most used stablecoin called USDC, but also issue another stablecoin called Eurocoin. USDC is a stablecoin that is backed by high liquid cash and cash equivalents. So when we're talking about cash, we're talking about we're mainly talking about US dollars that is customized by Bolly Mellon. Bolly Mellon is a global system important bank. And we're talking about cash reserves. We're talking about short-term US Treasury bills that is managed by BlackRock, which is a strategic partner of us. But beyond that, Circle also has developed a suite of products that help to utilize USDC in a better way. That includes some very interesting development like cross-chain transfer protocol, which we call them CCTP. I'm going to cover that later. And also the program wallets, which help the developers to develop better wallets that utilize USDC. Yeah.
Great introduction. Yeah, I will give you a chance, to dip into deeper, okay? Yeah, so basically, I think, on this panel, we almost can represent the diversity of different type of, RWA company, including stablecoin, bond, on-chain credit, and we have the payment gateway to facilitate, the off-chain, on-chain process, right? So I think just you share with our audience a little bit more. I want to start with so why we have to put the off-chain asset on-chain, and what the key benefits, and why just how you motivate the normal people, right? So they already can trade maybe some of the real world asset in real world, but what's the key benefit when they do an on-chain payment, on-chain trading, whatever. You just give us kind of your kind of overview from the perspective of your category.
Yeah, so the original vision of Centrifuge was to go after the long tail of private credit. So the report that Jing mentioned, the Boston Consulting Group, it's actually very interesting if you dive into the details of the report, because they're quoting these trillions of numbers, but there's two ways to look at that, right? There's this existing market from traditional finance where you've got something like 16 to 64 trillion of fixed income or credit-like assets that could come on chain. What's really interesting is if you think about the private assets that exist around the world that's not being captured today in the traditional financial system, and if you use the blockchain, because and the reason we're not seeing those assets financialized today is because it's impossible to do so, right? The economics don't work because you have so many intermediaries. It's so clunky. It's so slow. And so what I get most excited about personally is that there's actually the opportunity, because of the blockchain technology and everything that is Web3, to actually financialize entire assets, private assets that exist in the world today that are not being utilized in any way, in any financial manner. And that could be an entire unlock for new economies, for entire businesses, and of course at the individual level. So that's the thing that gets me really excited, and I think gets us really excited about this industry specifically at Centrifuge.
Yeah, I think to be on that and also OpenEden, I think streaming of asset is incredible. Like if you think about the idea and concept of streaming, almost everything today is streaming. You have, in Singapore, Pay Now, you send money instantaneously from, Mary to Peter, and in China you have WePay, WeChat Pay, and that's instant. But with a vault, you're actually tokenizing, you're breaking down intermediaries like Colin has mentioned, you're allowing for instant finality, instant settlement. Like in our case, we offer instant settlement of both minting and redemption if there's liquidity in the vault. That, TradFi, the status quo, have your T+2, T+4. Sometimes they lose your funds. When I was in investment banking in Deutsche Bank, there are occasions where your trade actually breaks and you lose that trade and just fumbling with your operations back office stuff, and you just can't find a trade for days. And that's that's happened just 5-6 years ago, and it's very recent, and it's unthinkable that something like this is still happening to this context. And that's one. The second thing is transparency. Like with Operation 2.0, with the shadow banking and across different parts of the world, it's difficult to actually trust the banks. I don't say this, because I'm anti-banks, but there's still a lot of mistrust with the banking system. And so with tokenization, you are actually instilling a lot of trust, because you don't have to trust a banking statement because it's JP Morgan. You don't have to trust a bank because it's DBS Bank, but anyone can go on the blockchain and verify from a third party that there are these tokens that are backed by underlying assets. And the third thing that really I think is cutting down on intermediaries, where in our case we are not relying on transfer parties, we're not relying on fund administrator, we are relying on ensuring that seamless, that peer-to-peer transfer asset. And the last thing I would say is the DeFi layer, right? Like if you actually buy a bunch of stocks in a brokerage account, you can only take leverage from that brokerage account or that bank. But imagine this, buying a stock from JP Morgan, taking leverage from Goldman Sachs, and equalizing that playing field in the way banks charge their customers and not being held hostage to that. So I think there is a lot of advantages in tokenizing assets today.
Okay, yeah, so I think the area that I'm most excited about and something that's directly involved with Alchemy Pay is, stablecoins. I think this is where we're seeing huge progression and development for the entire cryptocurrency space. This is where we're seeing, the number of agencies, governmental agencies, banks who need to be involved in overseeing transactions. Suddenly, that has just been, so much of that has been removed by on-chain transactions, and I think this is a really exciting area. I think, obviously we've got USDC, which is highly respected. We've got PayPal has now launched their stablecoin. I think also it's really, it makes transactions faster. Settlement is almost instant. It is a powerful new way of actually transacting and buying real-world goods and services. This is something we've seen beginning to change, I think, now over the last, let's say, couple of years. We are moving, because of stablecoins, we're moving away from just the idea of crypto for speculation. We are seeing the real-world use of stablecoins for actually making real-world transactions, real-world goods and services, payments. So I think that's an area I'm very excited about. The other area perhaps is the idea of fractionalization of NFTs. I think it has, it democratizes a lot of asset classes for investors, for retail investors as well, brings them onto a more level playing field with institutions, and I think that's very exciting as well. It could also take something it can take assets that are quite illiquid and make them liquid through that as well. So maybe those are kind of two areas that I'm particularly interested in, yeah.
Thank you for all the good words about USDC. We're stablecoin, so we're probably one of the most known or easiest to understand RWA in the world right now. So from my perspective, besides all the good benefits of the RWA, I think stablecoin or USDC plays a very special role here. I'm a product manager, so I came from a product view that the stablecoins are created due to customer obsession, due to the real need of the general public. We're moving out of the stage where we only do speculative trading. Now we're getting into more utilization of the crypto assets. And that means we're going to the general public. We're talking to every customer, and they need a medium to understand the value of the assets. And I was reading an article which is very interesting, introducing different RWA platforms. They talk about the fast settlement, they talk about security, but at the very end, they say they all generate APY in USDC. I think that's the value we're providing. We're making more people understand the real world assets a little better through their common sense. And that's the part I like the most about this.
Yeah, this reminded me of, I think the other week, at the Stanford Blockchain Week, there's a investor panel. And then we're talking about, are we having any kind of, consumer crypto, application which really go to kind of the mass adoption? And they say, yes, we have, which is stablecoin, ironically, okay. Yeah, so, I think it's like, all of you covered a lot of key benefits with like global accessibility, transparency, the DeFi composability, like the immutable ownership, all those are really good kind of benefits. I just want to kind of understand, say, from the tech perspective, a little bit kind of techy, like, are we getting there? I mean, just like, actually the whole day we are talking about the infrastructure. We have some other kind of panel talking about, ZK and middleware, layer 1, layer 2, roll up, whatever. I just like from your side, right? So you are more like from the use case side, RWA use case kind of perspective. Could you let us know more about like what type of tech can make it possible to put kind of the off-chain, asset on-chain? And what type of tech constraint right now you are facing, which will actually maybe slow down your kind of the growth?
Sam, you want to go first?
Okay, no problem. I'm happy to take this one first. Actually, I have a lot of talk about. So, as mentioned earlier, USDC is playing a supportive role or medium role in a lot of RWA-related use cases. And we have noticed two things that are very, I would say, bothers a lot of customers in the current crypto world. The first one is there are so many chains. So what we're trying to do here at USDC is we're trying to cover as many chains as possible to launch USDC natively. So USDC has already been on 9 chains, and what is happening right now is we're having something called a Stable September. We're launching 6 new different chains, including things like Base chain, OP mainnet, and Cosmos through Noble. And we have Near, Polkadot, and the Polygon POS on the way in the next 1 or 2 months. So we're trying to bring native USDCs to as many platforms as possible. So when the RW issuers try to issue their assets on different chains, I believe they have their own concerns about the pros and cons. We want to make sure that we're always there for you. So this is number one. The number 2 thing, which is my favorite, is a very cool technology called the cross-chain transfer protocol. We launched this several months ago. So we have notified that the liquidity is very, very fragmented. And to bring stablecoin from one chain to another, usually in the past, you need to go through the bridges, the wrapped USDC, wrapped other stablecoins, which is a honeypot. So what we have done is to develop a permissionless protocol where developers can easily integrate into their existing wallets, messaging apps, or any bridges. So the end customers can move native USDC from one chain to another chain easily without going through a centralized bridge. So this is a very cool technology. For the future, if I'm I'm a user on Avalanche, I want to buy an Arbitrum-based NFT that's representing a, let's say, house. I can do that through Avalanche on Uniswap and just buy it with USDC and then get it listed on OpenSea or some other platforms. So this is one thing I like the most. This is really solving the interoperability problems here. Yeah.
Anyone else want to take this?
Sure.
Add on some point.
Let me take this question. I think with most RWA issuers, I think typically they would say the tech is easy. I think this is quite common. Like, what have we achieved with RWA? I mean, especially with Centrifuge being a leader in this space, there's always that question: what have we achieved as a sector? What have we done that is different from the STOs in 2017 and 18? I actually think that it's a combination of the environment that we are in. I always give this analogy: you have pets.com, which is eventually going to work, but it's just the wrong time, wrong place. Number two, I think that the maturity, like to what Sam has mentioned, and to the use cases of different chains, multi-chain, cross-chain, the maturity of the infrastructure and the tools that used to support RWA is ever growing. It's more mature than 2 years ago. It's more mature than a year ago. There are more devs building. There are more issuers, and the competition drives innovation. Like for us, and I think one of the major challenges is how do you exactly ensure price integrity? How do you ensure the independence in price? Like, if I price a money market product today, how are you as an issuer ensuring that the price is indeed the price that you print on chain? Because the thing is, with the status quo, the traditional finance, you can actually say, hey, we make a mistake, let's refund you that statement, let's send you a new statement, it's just another email that I can send you. That's typically what my banker would have told me. But the blockchain, if you mint and you settle the price of a token there and there, you're stuck. It's immutable, right? There is going to be that concept of consequences. So I think that the level of price integrity and independence and cross-reference is one of the biggest challenges for a very fungible product like ours. Is how do you actually achieve that? I think number two is using smart contracts and ensuring compliance with, whether it's a travel rule, whether it's whitelisted addresses that's not blacklisted, whether it's not sanctioned addresses. I think using smart contracts will resolve a lot of problems with onboarding and assessing securities on chain. The third thing is soulbound NFTs. That's a very new concept that I think is a game changer. Like, it's bloody challenging to open a bank account today, especially if you are a crypto, if you're honest enough to tell them you're a crypto company. I'm pretty confident that it's going to take you months or it's never possible. But imagine this: if you have a soulbound token, you have that zk-sync encryption, you have the ability to onboard different banks with that soulbound node token. That effectively equalize and give you access on a whole different level playing field. Like today, I'm just using this bank because it's, I'm onboarded, I'm just lazy, even though, Bank B is offering me better rates. So I think with maturity, with the right environment, I think this environment today creating the perfect storm for a lot of the breakthrough in technology that we want to see, whether it's using smart contracts, whether it's blockchain. And the last part I want to say is transparency. So, like for us, we work with Chainlink Oracle, where they have, APIs plug into our, custodians. And, one of the challenges is how do we ensure real-time transparency? It's a balance between how much transparency you want to share with your investors. It's a balance between the cost, the gas fees, because every time you have a verification on-chain, it costs you money. And number three, some wallet addresses may not necessarily want to expose to, outsiders that they are investors. So while, I'm an advocate for transparency, but there is a reason why brokerages and private banks do exist today, because there is a need for, some level of opacity. So with technology like ZK Sync, right, it's going to help us to push the frontier of RWA a lot greater in a more institutional manner than before.
Cool. So then I really want to go a little bit deeper, okay? Say, echo our kind of thing, which is interoperability. I think this is the biggest problem for RWA. We talk about, okay, so probably, you have the tech issue, right? So I'm really curious, actually, the friction is really come from the tech, we are lack of some tech stack, or actually the friction is from the real world, like regulation, like legal, or all the other things, or maybe just like, the user experience, so that it's very hard for you to onboard the mass adoption, basically, right? So is it from tech or is it from, the other thing?
So just to talk a little bit maybe about our challenges, something like we're a payment gateway, so we're the way to enter and exit the space to move between fiat and crypto. Something like KYC has always been holding us back. So that's it's very clunky. Even for very small value transactions, you may have to do KYC. So something like. But we're seeing that improve, ZK, KYC now. Okay, so we still need at some point, if we have regulators come to us, they want to see that we have done due diligence on a platform, and that we can eventually get more details on a particular transaction or a particular user. But for the most part, we can trust that ZK, KYC. Now that's going to really take away a lot of the problems. You're just going to do it once, and that'll be it. So I think that's going to be a big step forward. One of the challenges for us as well has been, in fact, that USDC is on so many chains. So that's hard work for our devs to hear about. You're moving on to another 7. But the idea that there are so many chains has fragmented the space as a whole, and it's overwhelming to newcomers. I think that's fair to say. And so that's something that the development that Sam was talking about. This is something that's also very exciting to us, and actually something that's going to be useful for us too, and ultimately make the whole space more accessible. I think the other thing in the payment sector, payments, fintech, traditional finance, payments, that is a very splintered space as well. So if you're in Europe or you're in USA, let's say, it's only Visa, MasterCard, the only mobile wallets are Google Pay and Apple Pay. The conversation doesn't go beyond that, really. But in Southeast Asia, for example, you've got so many different domestic payment systems, and so as a company providing on and off ramps, we've worked really hard to support things like Gcash. We call them alternative payment methods, but that's got something like 60-70 million users in the Philippines. Something like Pix in Brazil is about 120 million users. So these are actually important payment methods. So for us, that challenge has been to piece together what are some pretty fragmented, what is a pretty fragmented, two pretty fragmented sectors, the world of blockchain and the world of fintech.
I think it's an education problem, right? So if you're in traditional finance and you're an asset manager and I'm trying to talk to you about Centrifuge, you need to understand the technology, right, and what it's actually replacing. So one of the things we talk a lot about is the traditional securitization process. You'll have 14 different service providers, but one of those service providers might be like a payment agent or a verification agent. That person is literally just making sure that you actually sent the money to the person that you said you sent the money to. Or a verification agent might say you actually put the asset into the structured product that you said you put in. the blockchain can verify these types of things for us, right? But if you're talking to a traditional asset manager, you actually have to talk them through how smart contracts work and how that's actually going to replace traditional service providers that they rely on for the traditional financial transactions that they do. On the other side of it, if you're thinking about the investor class, and I'd be very curious how Eugene thinks about this, but when you're talking about like Dow treasuries and things like that, like the amount of education when you start talking about how does credit work, what are you buying, what is the underlying, right? What is the legal structures around these things?
What's the risk?
Yeah, what's the risk?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not just buying ETH, right? Like this is a whole new ballgame. So when I think about real world assets and having conversations with your crypto native on-chain investors, the education gap is massive. And so I think it is, I guess for TradFi it's technical, but for DeFi or the crypto realm, it's more commercial and more business in nature.
Definitely. So let's imagine, all the technical issue eventually will be solved, right? I think there are also a lot of other kind of real-world assets potentially could be on-chain as well. Like we are talking about the property, like the gold and even the artwork, all the things, right? But my question will be, are they all digitizable, or is it necessary to put all the real-world assets on-chain, or only kind of a set of a certain category of the real-world asset makes sense to put on-chain, from your perspective? Because this is also something right now when we see a lot of projects say, okay, so we want to put everything, all the real world, we want to tokenize all the real world assets, right?
I think the entire world of assets will move on-chain over the next X amount of years.
So that's your long-term vision?
Yeah, of course. But I think how we get there is really important, right? So I think a lot of the benefits of the blockchain, the way we look at it, is like the more esoteric, the more illiquid the asset class, the more structured the product, the more interesting or the more impact the blockchain technology can have today. But that doesn't, there's a reason that tokenized treasuries came on chain, right? Because there was a need for yield. It's a simple asset class, and it allows people access to yield after everything that's happened in crypto over the last 2 years. The more liquid markets, I think, traditionally aren't as interesting for use cases of the blockchain. But I think over time, the entire financial system and all the assets of the world will move on-chain, yes.
If it works and it improves the world today, then I don't see why would you stop at any particular, okay, like it's worked on all these particular asset classes, but we're not going to use it here, we're not going to use it here. I understand, it's exactly right what Colin said, something like property, there was a lot of talk, there's been a lot of talk about putting, property deeds on chain, being able to sell property much more quickly. But of course, we've run into, a very complex, series of transactions, series of contracts. But he's absolutely right, the idea that, when we do get that fixed, when we do work out how that can be done, the impact will be huge. Suddenly the property market will be much more liquid. You can buy and sell properties so much more quickly, So yeah, I think if it's working for one asset class, I can't see why it wouldn't work for all asset classes. I think for high value items, it kind of makes sense in terms of that fractionalization. Something like artworks is a good example. Yeah. Property is also a good example. You are able to trust the system. You're able to trust the other people who are also owning fractions of whatever the item is, because you've got it on chain. So I think we'll probably see, high-value items in a fractionalized manner might be one of the more early asset classes to move on chain and have a big impact.
Then what's next? Say, what type of new innovations you already see they are emerging, or in your kind of vision it can be unlocked if there are more kind of real-world assets beyond chain?
I think a return in terms of new use cases. Yeah. Let me just put it in this way. I was a startup founder.
Yeah.
We always say that big something people want. So I've seen that customers and startups have been very creative, creating this new demand and new generations. The number here is Jing mentioned earlier, the total value locked in DeFi as of today is about 40 billion, while BlackRock itself, just BlackRock only, manages around 10 trillion assets. So
We only have one tiny.
it's a tiny, teeny piece. So I've seen different kind of use cases, bonds, properties, even the CO2 emissions, things like that. So if you don't have a crystal ball for which one is going to come first, but I know for sure there's one thing that probably they're going to need some stable coins to help them kind of finish that transaction, and we're waiting for that. We're very optimistic and very bully on that.
Cool. Okay, so one last question. So this week we are all at Token2049, right? Which means just that you are all kind of interested in the Asian market. Just share your plan maybe. What's your plan in Asia for the next year?
Yeah, so
Or how you see the market in Asia? Is it different from maybe Europe market or maybe American market?
Yeah, so Asia is somewhat our specialist subject because of the idea that we've supported so many of these local domestic payment systems. So this is why we're sort of ahead of the game on that. So that's one aspect. It probably doesn't surprise you to hear Hong Kong is of particular interest to us. So we're currently going through the process of applying for that license. So not sure when that would occur or how that would occur. But certainly we're hoping to continue progressing and hoping that we can get the retail exchange license there. Yeah, so that's a big part of our future plans.
I guess it's easy for me. We have our headquarters in Singapore, so.
You're local.
Yeah, and but it's more important to recognize that there are spots in the Asia region where regulatory climate is a lot more friendlier than parts in other parts of the world, and I think that's going to help drive one capital builders. And just a lot more energy into what I think is very promising. I mean, if you look at the Korean exchanges, I mean that's really a testimony to what it epitomizes the energy, the level of fervor that I think we see a lot of promise. And in Japan, you have a lot of regulatory breakthrough, whether it's stable coins, whether it's the STO. So I do think Asia is going to be really interesting in the next, couple of years.
All the money's here, so that's the way I think about it. At least from the traditional capital markets perspective, right? I think everything you just said is spot on. I do think that it's very important, at least the way I think about it is we talk about bringing liquidity and market making to these traditional illiquid asset classes. I think, at least for Centrifuge, or if I think about the real world asset movement in general, is that if we are going to move into Asian markets, I don't think it's the sense I get of the way the Asian markets function, or maybe the mentality around it, is that it's not like a buy and hold position, right? Especially when you think about DeFi and kind of the nature of crypto. People want to be able to have leverage, utility, trading, moving around in and out of these assets, speculating to some degree. So I think the idea of traditional private credit markets where it's a buy and hold for 2 or 3 years, I think that needs to probably be. I'm already rethinking that a little bit, right? As we think about what types of asset classes, what types of offerings, what type of utility needs to be brought into the Asian markets if we are going to make real world assets a thing.
So for me, the feeling of this event is home. I feel like I'm back home. I was born and raised in China, spent 14 years in San Francisco, and now I'm finally here in Singapore. But we know for the fact that USDC is more like a newcomer here. So for us, the big thesis is to work with the local partners to learn from you guys, to get educated, to collaborate with you, to grow with you. So if you have any ideas about how we can grow USDC together or grow your thing together. We're very open-minded. We're open to all kinds of ideas and conversations.
Well, thank you so much for such an insightful panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.